All right, today we're going to tackle a really fascinating paradox: how discovering a treasure trove of natural resources can sometimes be the absolute worst thing to happen to a country. I know, it sounds completely backward, right? But it's a real economic phenomenon. Let's get into why.
How can that be? You strike oil, you find a massive deposit of natural gas. You'd think your country's problems are basically over. But what if that incredible discovery is actually a hidden trap? What if it's the first domino to fall in a chain reaction that can lead to total economic ruin? Well, that's the puzzle we're going to solve today.
So, this isn't just some random fluke. It's actually a well-documented economic problem with a name: the resource curse. You might also hear it called the paradox of plenty. We're about to unpack the economic chain reaction that makes this curse so surprisingly powerful. And the specific engine driving this whole curse has a really weird name: Dutch disease. Now, the name might sound strange, but the concept is actually pretty straightforward. A sudden flood of money from one source, like oil, doesn't actually lift all the other boats in the economy. In fact, as we're about to see, it can actually sink them. So let's see where this all began.
To really get what this disease is all about, we got to go back to the beginning, to patient zero, you could say. And for that, we're heading over to the Netherlands.
Okay, picture this. It's the 1960s. The Dutch hit the jackpot. They discover this massive natural gas field. Gas exports start booming, money is just pouring into the country. On the surface, everything looked perfect. But economists started noticing something weird was happening under the surface. Other really important parts of the Dutch economy, like manufacturing, were actually getting weaker. And just like that, the textbook case of Dutch disease was born. So how does this actually happen? How does such good news turn so bad? Well, it's not some kind of dark magic. It's a really predictable and often pretty devastating economic cycle. Let's break down the mechanics step by step. Okay, so it all kicks off with a huge flood of foreign money coming in to buy this hot new resource. Now, to buy all that gas or oil, other countries have to buy your local currency first, right? So, demand for your currency goes through the roof and its value skyrockets. This sounds great, but here's the catch. That super strong currency makes all of your other exports, things like cars, cheese, or flowers, suddenly way too expensive for anyone else to buy. At the exact same time, who wouldn't want to work in the booming new industry with the high-paying jobs? So you see this massive brain drain, with workers and investment flowing out of traditional sectors like farming and factories, making them even weaker.
This whole thing isn't just some quirky bit of Dutch history. Oh no. This exact same cycle has played out over and over again, all around the world, and often with consequences that were way, way more devastating.
Yeah, the pattern is, well, it's tragically clear. After the Netherlands, which was the original case study, you see it in places like Nigeria. The discovery of oil there basically hollowed out what was once a really strong agricultural economy. And then there's Venezuela, where an extreme, almost total dependency on oil became a huge reason for its catastrophic economic collapse when those oil prices eventually tanked.
And that right there is the key. That's the real danger. When your entire economy is basically balanced on the head of a pin on one single commodity, you are incredibly vulnerable. Because here's the thing about resource prices. They are wildly unpredictable. They go up, sure, but they also come crashing down. And when they do, an economy with nothing else to fall back on, well, it crashes right along with them.
Okay, but it's not all doom and gloom. This isn't an unbeatable curse. Countries that know this danger is out there can absolutely take steps to avoid the trap. So what does that actually look like? Well, smart governments have a pretty clear playbook they can run. First, you actively invest in those other sectors: manufacturing, agriculture, technology, to keep them strong and competitive. You can also create what are called sovereign wealth funds. Think of them like a giant national savings account. You take that resource money and you save it for a rainy day, instead of just letting it flood your economy all at once. And this is crucial, you invest in education and skills, so your workforce is ready for all kinds of jobs, not just jobs in the one boom industry.
So at the end of the day, it really comes down to a choice between two very different futures. On one path, you've got that fragile, resource-dependent economy, just waiting for the next price shock. But on the other path, you have a diversified economy. It's got multiple strong sectors, it's resilient, it's stable, it's built to last. The goal is to use that resource money as a bridge to build that stronger future, not as the whole foundation.
Look, if there's one thing you remember from all this, let it be this simple but super powerful equation. It's the whole vicious cycle in one sentence. Resource wealth leads to a strong currency, which leads to weak industries, which ultimately leads to massive long-term risk.
And that brings us to a really critical question for our own time. As the world pivots to new green resources, We're talking lithium for batteries, rare earth minerals for wind turbines. The exact same risks are there.